And now, live from Jerusalem, you're listening to Israel Inspired Radio. Here are your hosts, Rabbis Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel.
Shalom, this is Israel Inspired on the Land of Israel Network, thelandofisrael.com. Ari Abramowitz here with my esteemed guest, for which I am extraordinarily honored, Rabbi Yehudah Glick. To have you here is a tremendous, tremendous merit. I am one of your greatest fans, an admirer, and grateful for your self-sacrifice for Israel and the Jewish people. There's a lot to say about you. I don't want to go into it. I went to your Wikipedia. It described you as a rabbi and a politician. And what did you say to me outside?
Except for two things, it's exact. It's accurate, totally accurate. I'm not a rabbi and not a politician. I'm Yehudah Glick.
You're Yehudah Glick, and you survived an assassination attempt. You were shot in the chest 4 times for your work that you were doing for human rights, not Jewish rights, but human rights on the Temple Mount. That all faiths should be able to worship there equally. You can't really put Rabbi Yehudah Glick in a box, right? Because there's the right wing. No, he's not really right. He's also interfaith, and you go into villages. You were recently beat up by a mob. I want to talk about that, but I don't want to just talk about that. I want to talk about everything that's happening in the world, because people are confused right now. There's a lot going on that is more confusing, at least for this guy. I'm a simple mind. I'm just a simple Jew. More confusing for me than ever before. So I want to talk about that, but could you just tell us what this just happened? It was a recent thing. You were attacked by a mob. Could you share briefly the story there?
Okay, Ari, shalom. It's wonderful being here. I don't know. You've probably been here. It's probably not your first visit here, but it's my first visit here, and I'm really, wow. I'm blown away by just what I've seen, and not because the wind is so strong, but it's the spirit that's so strong. And I'm just we'll start off, instead of starting with what happened, we'll start off with
a little bit closer with the mic.
Avinu kulanu kechad, kulanu kechad, beor panecha. Barucheinu Avinu kulanu kechad, kulanu kechad, beor panecha. Bless us, our Father, all of us together, with the light of your face. Wow, God is really a blessing, and it's so wonderful to be here. And you said I inspire you, you inspire me, and we're all inspired by Hashem, who's really been so wonderful to us, and He's really poured so much greatness upon us, and He's using us as His instrument, as His tool. And yes, I had some kind of an incident a few weeks ago, and I'm not gonna try to ignore it or even look down at it. It was a very frightening, traumatic event. I went to pay a condolence call to a family living in Jerusalem who were parents of an autistic son who was killed accidentally by policemen who somehow thought he was carrying some kind of weapon. And I went to pay a condolence visit because we are, as I said, instruments of God. And God taught us from the very beginning that He created all men with His image. And if somebody, and life of a human being is the greatest thing there is in this world. And if the life of a human being was lost, somebody living in Jerusalem, and I felt that I was going to share my heart with them and show, at least try to express what Hashem taught us. Love, empathy. Unfortunately, these some of the neighbors of this family didn't like the fact that I call for inclusiveness. These are people that represent exclusiveness. Only we know what's right. Jerusalem is only ours. Temple Mount is only ours. These are radical political Muslims who, in the name of Islam, tried to beat me up. Thank God I was protected. As a matter of fact, the Surprisingly, I was protected by one of the people from the family, who on the one hand said to me, "You're not wanted here," but on the other hand, he understood that he had to protect me. And later on, I called the police and I called an ambulance, and my life was saved. But I was literally beaten up by 20 guys, 20, 30 guys who had actually, it was a lynch. They surrounded me and they were kicking me and punching me and slapping me and kicking me. My legs are till now, 3 weeks later, are black and blue. But Baruch Hashem, they didn't even fracture any of my bones. Not only did not fracture any of my bones, they did not manage to fracture any part of my faith in God. And
what about your faith in them? Right, because I'll tell you, I've seen video. I've gone up to Har HaBayit with you to Temple Mount. That was unforgettable. And I've seen you with the Arabs, and you go and you pray with them. You pray with them, and despite the fact that you took 4 bullets to the chest from an Arab assassin, nonetheless, you went to this house to pay your condolences, and then you're beat up there. When does your faith, not in God, but when does your faith in them waver?
First of all, that first assassination attempt 5 years ago, I was shot by a Muslim person, but I was also operated on by a Muslim surgeon, and I was treated by a Muslim nurse. And I think that, yes, there are quite a lot of people who are influenced by radical Islam and radical politicians, but throughout the ages, I know that we have to believe and of course I don't have to endanger my life, and I think if I would have known that I was going to endanger myself, I would definitely not go to visit there. But I think that in general, I believe that God created man in His image, and it's our obligation to try to influence the world to become a better world. And I think the fact that I went there, even though the fact that I was beaten up and it was something very, very traumatic for me, I think the message went around, and God has His ways. I think more and more people that have heard that I went to visit really appreciated the fact that we Jews went to visit a Muslim house. And I think that in a long term, these events, I always say love is much stronger than hate. Light is definitely much powerful, much more powerful than darkness. So yes, there were a few individuals who tried to beat me up, but I believe that long run, when we show light, just like God said, we just sing with your light, the light of your faith, you give us blessings. And I think that the Aaronic priestly blessing is that Ya'er Hadonai Panav Elecha, God should fill your face with His light, and that's our job in the world, is to add light. And if you'd like visit our website at shalomjerusalem.org, you can see that people are from all over the world are inspired by the light. They're coming to us and they're asking for us to pray for them, and they're trying to, and that's what I devoted my life to. And I believe that eventually, the more you do, and not only do I believe, I look back. You know, I always say Theodor Herzl, when he began, he didn't get only pebbles and stones. They made fun of him. They fired him from his job. They gave him a condition that he was not allowed to mention Jewish state in any of his articles in the newspaper he was writing. Do you know any of the names of those people who were against him? Nobody knows. But you know Theodor Herzl. And not only know Theodor Herzl, you know the Zionist movement. You know that where we are living. You know, and I say, I'm sure when you came out of here, people said, Ari, you're crazy. You're out of your mind. Come on.
Definitely.
Today, I was here today. We drove
my parents.
We drove up here. We saw tens of guys carrying and building, and building is always stronger than maybe you can do it faster to destroy something. And also, as it says in Psalm 125, if you don't have God's aid, you're wasting your time trying to build. but you feel when you have God's aid. And when do you have God's aid? When you're doing what you know is right. When you understand that what you're doing is nothing to do with your personal interests. Personal interest would be sitting somewhere in an air-conditioned house on the beach. But if you really want to enjoy life,
a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, Ari, what Mesirut Nefesh, self-sacrifice coming out here?" And I think zero Mesirut Nefesh. I have 2 air conditioning systems. I have, but you 3 bathrooms.
But that's not the story. You have satisfaction.
Right.
I'm here. It's my first time. You've been here for 5 years. You remember there was nothing here, and today, houses, pool.
That's true. But even then, when there was nothing and I slept in the
4,000
cold,
trees,
it was still the most joyful, exhilarating.
Because you're a person of vision, and when you're a person of vision, you know that okay, today it's not going to be simple, but it's here for a purpose and for a much greater purpose.
Well, I want to talk about vision for a second. Shalom Jerusalem Foundation, right? That's shalomjerusalem.org. You're taking Zionism, you say, to the next level. You're helping people around the world see what's happening in our times through a biblical prism, right? Through a biblical lens. And really, that's one of the reasons, the primary reason I wanted to have you here, other than you can see the fruits of what you have helped bring into the world, is to help us see things through a biblical prism a little bit. But first, I just want to ask you, what does that mean, take Zionism to the next level? What does that mean?
Okay, first of all, it's wonderful coming to here, to biblical lands with biblical lens. This is the land that our forefathers lived here and dreamt here and were promised here. But when God takes Abraham and says, listen, I'm going to give you many descendants. I'm going to give you the land. I'm going to bless you. But the whole idea was that you should be a blessing to all the families of the earth. Zionist movement, when Herzl started it and said, listen, we need a shelter for the people of Israel. That's true. But now the shelter for the people of Israel is existing. Any Jew can come here. It's safe here. The question is not that. The question is, what's the purpose? What's the essence? In this week's portion of the Torah, the people of Israel are called Eidah. Eidah comes from the word Ya'ad, destiny. We are chosen as a people with a destiny. And our destiny is to be a blessing to all the universe. Our people, our idea, the Zionist movement is not just a national movement. It's a global, universal movement to bring the world united around God. God chose Jerusalem, God chose the Temple Mount to rest his divine presence. And he wants the world to be blessed by it. And he wants us to turn on the light to the nation. It says that we're supposed to be a light to the nation, not because we're any better, not because we're a light. We're supposed to turn on the light. We're supposed to turn people on. We're supposed to talk to people around the world and say, guys, the blessing is here. Connect. Make sure you're focused. Make sure you're channeled to the blessing coming from here. And you, Jeremy, myself, Ishai, Josh, all the people that are broadcast here are wonderful people. But you're all, the idea is, like Moses taught us, put yourself aside, your ego aside, just allow God to stream through you. Allow yourself to be a channel broadcasting from the divine broadcast.
And you've been broadcasting from the Temple Mount.
Yeah,
you've been doing live tours. First of all, how do people connect to that? How do they do live Zoom?
First of all, you go into our website, shalomjerusalem.org, or you can go into our Facebook page, Shalom Jerusalem Foundation, or you can go into our YouTube channel, Shalom Jerusalem Foundation. I'm always broadcasting every single day, at least once or twice, broadcasting about what's going on here, connecting. And most thing is I always read every one of the comments, every one of the responses, and I try to refer to them because people raise issues. People, when they go into my Facebook, they leave a comment and they say, listen, I've been suffering from depression in the past so-and-so years. And we start a conversation. Sometimes I call them. And people are looking for that. And we're talking directly to people. Simple people, not only through pastors or through political leaders, touching the hearts of human beings.
We just sat here, and you said, "Oh, Ari, look at this chumash, right?"
Yeah, I have my.
And you said that someone reached out to you?
Scott, Bishop Scott from Zambia, asked me if I can send him a chumash, and I promised him I'll do that, and I'm going to send it. I'm going to get him a chumash, and I'll send it to him. And that's the concept, is that you talk to people. Moses, in this week's portion of the Torah, Numbers 20, God said you can't go into the land. What happened? Moses took the stick and he hit the stone. And God said, listen, there are certain times you need miracles. You need to push things and to divide the sea. But when you're coming to live in Israel, you need the patience of talking. And when you talk to somebody, not talk at somebody, not talk above somebody, but talk to somebody, you see the impression of really reaching out. And when we talk to people, God said you can even talk to a stone, you'll see the water will come out there. But you need to talk. And that's the idea of coming to Israel and leading the land of Israel, is being able to correspond, to develop a level of communication, to look at the guy's eye, to hear what his heart is, and not to look at his car or his house or his bank account, but looking at the guy's eye, looking and connecting. And the only way to connect is by talking and listening. Talking and listening. And that's the spirit of Jerusalem. City of Shalom. When you stand at the gates of Jerusalem, you know you're standing at a city that unites. A city that unites because it's a city of inclusiveness. City of Shalom, Yerushalom. The city of Shalom means a city of inclusiveness. And these enemies of this city are those who are exclusive. Those who think that they have it all for themselves. Nobody has it all for himself. And the idea of Jerusalem is to turning Jerusalem. That's when we say Zionism, Zion is the place where God's Shekhinah is there. We're waiting for God to return to his divine presence to Zion. And Zion is the place of God's divine presence. The Temple Mount is God's throne. That's where you can connect to the unity of the world. And so, when you took me to the wonderful prayer house here. You told me it's not a synagogue. It's not just a synagogue. It's not, because a synagogue means that I can go pray there and go back home. It's something that you're also listening there. The windows there, the round, the idea of, in a circle, everybody is exactly the same distance from the center. In a circle, there's nobody at a specific angle. Everybody there is part of a circle, and I see the concept of open to all the directions of the world, and that's what we're talking about here. The talking about here is building, planting. What is planting? Planting means you're putting something in the ground with patience that it'll grow, and it'll grow. And you have 4,000 trees here. You'll probably have many, many more tomorrow, and many, many more the next.
Please God, next year we'll have 3,000 bottles of wine.
Wow, 3,000 bottles of wine. Wow.
One of them has Rabbi Yehudah Glick's name, and one is Rabbi Uri Bank. Just one of the things that has always struck me is the bridge that you built between universalism and the individual. Meaning some people are so focused on changing the world that they don't have time for individuals that you meet throughout the day. You'll stop somewhere and you'll talk to someone, just any person, for an hour if they need your heart and attention. Like wherever you are, you're just flowing with that.
Nothing greater in the world. People ask me, I'm a tour guide. Besides all my other things, I'm also a tour guide, a licensed tour guide. And people always ask me, what is the most beautiful view in Israel? I always say, the human view. You go meet people, touch people, talk to people, listen to people, see their eyes, see their pain and their joy. And by doing that, I'm now involved with my wife. My wife has an organization. She deals with orphans and widows. You see that these people are lacking this shield, this backbone. And I speak to the widows and I speak to the orphans and I try to connect them and give them a hope and building together. It's not about opening an orphanage and taking children out of their homes, but it's about connections. The idea of connections. And how do you begin a connection? When you talk to the person and you listen to the person. And that's what we know that Abraham did. Abraham created souls. How did he create souls? Souls are existing. The way to create soul is to take a lost soul and listen to it and allow it to express itself, because God created every single one of us uniquely. We're not all one. I always say that when you go to a concert, you're not there just to watch the cello. The beauty of the concert is the harmony. And it's a beautiful thing. There's a word in Hebrew which has two meanings, almost the opposite meaning. It's menatzeach. Now, when you go to the Olympics, you don't say, I want all the teams to win, I want it to be harmony here. Because you want everyone to express himself. But when you go to the concert, the menatzeach is the one who manages... The conductor, the one who manages to direct the composition. What's the composition? You don't sit in the hall there saying, I want the trumpet to win, the trumpet, yay, the trumpet. You missed the whole thing. You want the harmony. That's the idea, is the harmony. And God says, Temple Mount is a house of prayer for all nations. He wants every single nation to express itself. He wants my friend from Zambia, and my friend from Trinidad and Tobago, and he wants my friend from Romania and from Ecuador. These are people that contacted me this morning from all over the United States, even from Texas, and he wants the people from Ohio together with the people from Ontario, Canada, and he wants every one of them to express himself and to be himself, because God created us. God didn't do Control V, Control V, Control V. He created every single one of us with our soul. And the soul of the world, Jerusalem, is consistent of all the souls. So when back to Shalom Jerusalem, when I go up to Temple Mount, I'm never there for myself. I always go with a list of prayer requests. On our website, people leave prayer requests. People go to shalomjerusalem.org and they write down, my need is medical. Now, medical also divides into physical medicine, psychological medicine, emotional medicine. People are there who didn't find their soulmate. People are there who have problems with educating their children. People are there with a problem educating their parents. People are there with a problem of having children. People bring down their needs, and I go up to the Temple Mount and I read every single name, and I concentrate on their names, and I do it Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Zoom.
That sounds like a prayer, though.
That's what it is.
Are you allowed?
First of all, are you allowed? You're allowed to breathe. Temple Mount is a house of prayer for all nations. It means that's what we do. Now, God said to the policeman to tell us not to pray there. What does that mean? It means don't do the things that interfere your prayer. Don't hold a prayer book. Don't shake and dance. But we pray. We were there. We had a prayer session with Zoom. 15 pastors from all over the United States, and Afro-American, Chinese, Hispanic, white, praying for the peace of the United States of America. This week we had a prayer for Africa. We had pastors from Africa praying for Africa. Now, do you know that Africa right now this year suffered from a terrible locust, from terrible famine, from persecution against people, the different religions? These people wanted to pray for them. Where do you pray? Temple Mount. So the Temple Mount serves as three things. It's the origin of Torah, the Word of God. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, from Zion comes out Torah. It's the center of prayer, and it's also the center of Shalom. So we go up to Temple Mount. We have Zoom prayers. Yesterday I got somebody from China. I said, please, next time you go up, I want to be on your Zoom. I need a prayer. Somebody in China, Benjamin Payne, he wants me to pray. He wants to pray on Temple Mount. Today in Corona, you're sitting in Shanghai, and you can pray on Temple Mount with our Zoom. And people watch it, and people are astonished. Wow, it's unbelievable. And so now it's true that what I'm doing right now, if I would have done 5 years ago, they would have arrested me. Because 5 years ago, if you would go up to Temple Mount and even whisper or say and mumble your lips, they would have arrested you. What happened? We made a change. We brought people to the Temple Mount. We told people, come. 5 years ago, there were 5,000 Jews on Temple Mount a year. In 2019, we had 50,000 Jews on Temple Mount.
All during those little windows of time the Jews are allowed up.
Exactly. 2014, we had 180,000 tourists from around the world on Temple Mount. 2019, we had 800,000.
Wow.
These are things that we changed, as I said before.
There's an awakening.
We are for evolution, not revolution. The changes don't happen in one day, just like the state of Israel wasn't established in one day. The settling of land. I always say, when you read the book of Joshua, it says Joshua can conquer this king and 31 kings all over. You would think, okay, no, we're finished, no more problems. So you turn the next page to the book of Judges, and you say, there are obstacles. You have to overcome every one of the obstacles. And wherever you manage to settle, you're settled. And wherever you don't manage to settle, and that's bringing lives. What captures an area? Not the soldier, but the mother and the elderly, as Zechariah says. You know what the story of redemption is? Children playing in the streets. That's the story. It wants children to play in the streets. It doesn't say children going to school. It doesn't say children sitting and studying. It says children playing in the streets. An elderly walking down the street. That's the redemption. The redemption is laughter. The redemption is the voice of a baby crying, of a mother sitting with her child, of a father sitting with a child, of a mother and a father sitting together, the love between a mother and a father.
Without needing to have a gun on your side.
Without needing to have a gun on your side. But, in the book of Nehemiah, it says they were building the wall. And by the way, it's a beautiful, interesting thing. In Nehemiah, everyone built the wall near his house. So that way, the guy's not going to, if you're in charge of the wall near your house, you're going to make sure it's going to be good. But they said they had their weapon with them, just in case.
In one hand, right?
You had to hold the weapon, but they worked from.
There were times that's how it's
sunrise to sunset, and so we're not extremely happy to go out for war, but we're there to protect ourselves. We're going to be strong because God's on our side, and God's on our side means it's not we're not against anybody.
With your
anybody
permission.
wants to join.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit, but not really, because one of the things you do at the Shalom Jerusalem Foundation, you said on the About Us, is helping people around the world see what's happening today through a biblical prism. And I wanted to talk to you about that because, out here, we're not only in Enclave 8 in the Trump plan, we are Enclave 8. Because of what we did out here, and by we, I mean Hashem did it through us, no question, but the borders would be different under the Trump plan. So we would be in a peninsula here, surrounded by, instead of looking at when groups come and say, these are the mountains of Judea, many people say that if we agree with this, I'd say this is the mountains of Palestine. And so the question is, I'm already framing the question, obviously loaded, where I'm coming from, which I didn't want to do. What I wanted to ask you, without my very, very strong and vociferous opinion being factored in, it's just confusing, this annexation sovereignty issue. It's confusing because there's people on the right, the far right, who are for it and against it, people who are, you normally be able to say on any given issue, these guys say this and these guys say that. Everybody's confused. Everybody's taking different opinions. I don't know, Yishai is sort of, sets my opinion for me very often. What do you have to say on the sovereignty annexation issue that is looming over us? So we're talking about July 1st is when Bibi is saying he will declare sovereignty over 30%. So do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have thoughts on that. But before I say thoughts I have, I just want to say, I don't know if you guys listened. Ari just now, he didn't ask a political question. He asked an existential question. It's not, are you for this and for that, or you're a Democratic, Republican, or you're a capitalist or a socialist. You're talking from yourself, from inside. You say, what am I going to do here? So it's a humanitarian question. And I'll say my take on it, but maybe I'm naive. One of the things beautiful about the era we're living in is that what's brand new today, in 2 months from now, is antiques.
Old news, right.
We're living in a time where we saw many changes. Can you imagine 1947? The United Nations votes for the partition agreement. Jews around the world are saying, oh my gosh, Jerusalem is not going to be in our hands. We've been dreaming so many years for Jerusalem. What can you talk about a Jewish state without Jerusalem? But in general, the Jewish world said, listen, celebrate what you have. Bless God for the half full cup. Everything we do is a step towards. And I tend to see things as happening gradually. In 1947, if 1948, if Ben Gurion would not have declared the state, and by the way, people think, hey, he declared the state. Our greatest allies told us not to. The Jewish world told us, guys, you're crazy, what are you doing? And we did it. Look, I don't know if I would choose it this way. People, it was very funny. When Trump announced the recognition of Jerusalem, and he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, people said, oh, Trump is the 45th president, and in Isaiah 45 it talks about Cyrus. There he is as our Cyrus.
I never heard that one.
Yeah, he's Cyrus, 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 Cyrus. What was Cyrus? Cyrus gave Jews permission to go back to Jerusalem and build Jerusalem. But I want to remind you, 3 years later, Cyrus changed his mind. And they stopped building for 20 years. But if not for Cyrus's permission, we wouldn't begin the Second Temple era. So Trump recognizing Jerusalem, Trump moving the embassy to Jerusalem was not a political event; it was a godly, biblical event. And we made another step ahead. And Trump's recognition of the Golan is another step ahead. And annexing another part of Judea and Samaria is a good blessing. Maybe we may go through some difficulties. Nobody promises it's always going to be uphill. Nobody promises that that's always going to be. But I think that if we see another step ahead, we should do whatever we can to bring the next step ahead. God will have his ways. And maybe God wants us to go through some difficulties. You know, I remember the uprooting of the Katif. I remember the uprooting of Yamit. Wow. I remember those days, 1978, 79. I remember I made Aliyah in 74 with the group of families that established Yamit. And it was a great painful event when they uprooted Yamit. It was a painful event when they uprooted the settlements in Katif and in Shamron. By the way, I was the highest ranked civil servant who resigned from the government because of the disengagement in 2015. But I'm happy that things have gone.
2005.
2005. I'm sorry, 2005. 2005. Yeah, 2005. I'll tell you another interesting thing. When the Oslo Accord came about, we were totally against it, and at first some of us gave a chance, but eventually we were very much against it. The Oslo Accord, though, was very sad because we brought the Palestinian Authority here, which is a totally corrupt thing, and it caused a lot of damage. But today, we are driving on roads that, if not for the Oslo Accord, wouldn't be existing.
Whoa!
All the big roads, all the superhighways, Road 5. These are the road that takes people from Beersheba to Jerusalem through Hebron. That main highway wouldn't be there if not for the Oslo Accord.
Why?
Because we used to drive through the cities. We were driving through the cities. You know, you would be driving the tunnels from here to Jerusalem. I
thought that I was an optimist. I thought I saw the cup half full. That is a new level of. I mean, now we can't drive through the cities because we have little mobile concentration camps in our own country. Some of them, there's some places where when you drive in there, if you're a Jew, it is death. Trouble. It's death. It's death.
Now, could you imagine we would have to drive through the super
But it wasn't
now,
like that because that created division, didn't it?
It created division.
You were talking about inclusiveness, not
no.
That created.
But in any place normal in the world, you don't drive through cities. You drive on highways around cities.
But the lack of face-to-face that we've had by driving through their villages have made it an us and a them. If I could, I would take down every red sign.
If you stand now today, every single day, for a half hour, an hour in the tunnels, can you imagine what would happen if you'd be driving through Dahisha and Bethlehem? Okay, now, so first of all, we built these superhighways. And that was something nobody could have dreamt of. The tunnels that we have over here, nobody could have dreamt of. And now they're building another tunnel. And they're building more and more and more. So these roads, God has his ways to bring blessings. God has his way to bring blessings. We don't understand.
I think that's
ways.
what you're saying.
We don't understand ways. But look, I always say.
But you just said one thing about
that's not my fault. I buy my glasses at the optometrist. If I would buy them at the pessimetrist, they may have been pessimistic, but at the optometrist, optimism is faith in God.
I love that.
Faith in God means, what does faith in God mean? It means you don't always know his ways. You can also cry and I'm not saying you shouldn't mourn, you shouldn't cry, you shouldn't do whatever you can to change things, to improve things. That's our job. But eventually, you have to say, okay, listen, I do whatever I can.
Gamzula tova.
No, not gamzula. Gamzula tova means, no, I'll take this. It means I'm doing whatever I can. I'm going to do whatever I can, and I'm going to succeed in doing whatever I can. And if God wants this to be over here instead of over here, it'll be over here. He knows what he wants.
But before it's over there, we have to do everything in our power to try with our own hishtadlut. So that's what I'm talking about right now. It's one thing to say the glass half full, great, but not if it was totally full and then we dumped it out to make it half full. What I'm saying is this. What I'm saying, you're talking about Ben Gurion and annexation and taking what we can get, but what we're actually doing, in my opinion, is tell me where I'm wrong here, because the moment you said this, I'm like, question mark on everything I believe. I need to hear what you have to say. But in my heart, I'm looking at this. We have right now 100% control over all of Judea and Samaria, and now we're going to be surrendering large swaths of our homeland to be a foreign country in order for a certificate of recognition by a Gentile country.
It's not a certificate of recognition. It's not a certificate. First of all, it's an internal issue. It's our issue, meaning that from now on, a person building a balcony in Efrat is not going to have to ask permission from the chief of the general, the military general. Is not going to have to. He'll be able to go build Efrat and Gush Etzion, which is something which nobody thought would happen so fast. And the same thing is going to happen in many issues. Right now, the settlements in Judea and Samaria have many obstacles by the fact that they're not under Israeli sovereignty. And as soon as we'll be under Israeli sovereignty, a lot of the bureaucracy will be shortened. Now, they're going to have obstacles. We'll have to find out how to overcome the obstacles. Well, now...
We may have to go through checkpoints. I've heard from certain people just to get here, Palestinian Authority, Palestinian police checkpoints.
I don't think that's going to happen. And I think we're going to have to. We definitely have to do whatever we can to make that not happen. But I think that
it's very hard for me to hold my own here, because when you speak, it's very, very strong for me to hear what you're saying. But it's just hard for me to wrap my mind around.
Look, I'll tell you something else. Let's think the other alternative. The other alternative is we don't do that right now. And in a few months, we have a new president in the United States who says to guys, come on, I want here a Palestinian state. Not only that, Obama, he wasn't strong enough against you. He was telling you guys, don't build, freeze the settlements. I'm going to be a president. I want to bring peace. I'm a man of vision. By the way, he doesn't have to be a mean person. He can be a person who really has good thoughts. Whatever you put on the ground has a more chance of being on the ground. Look, the president, the nominee Biden, he says he's not going to move the embassy back to Tel Aviv. When they were building the embassy, they were threatening us, guys. If you do that, the whole world is going to be against it. It's going to be a total danger. If he would not have moved, I can promise you that if Biden is elected or not, I don't know what's going to be. I can predict anything except for the future, but. Biden would not move the embassy to Jerusalem.
Oh, that's for sure.
Okay, so now the embassy's there. He says he's not going to move it back. So I don't know who's going to be. I don't know who's going to be elected. I can tell you one thing: the United States has been Israel's greatest ally from day one. And though many of the presidents didn't see things eye to eye with us, we had. I don't know if you remember. I remember Secretary of State Baker telling us that he's not going to help us bring Russian the Russian immigration, because we built some settlements. So we've gone through a lot of issues, and we're here. We're here because we were determined. We're devoted. It's not going to be easy.
Okay, Rabbi Yehudah, forgive me here, but when I look at Har HaBayit as an example, what's the only thing really that is preventing us from building the Beit HaMikdash? Our own minds, meaning that we could say, oh, the nations won't allow it, but we're actually in control. If we wanted like that, the Waqf is out. We could, if we wanted to, if we had a leader with that sort of vision. The same thing with sovereignty over 100% of Judea and Samaria. We could, if we want, do it. Countries don't have friends. They have interests. And so if Israel is a strong, powerful country acting with justice and truth, then we could declare sovereignty over all of it and Har HaBayit. And why do we need to say, oh, thank you, Trump, and 30% and take what we can get? Take what we can get from who?
First of all, I think we should nothing to be embarrassed to say thank you, Trump.
Thank you, Trump.
Part of our Judaism is Yehuda comes from the word Toda. We have to say thank you and take nothing for granted. But I can say another thing, and that's something that I truly believe. When I started going to Temple Mount, and I said, "Listen, guys, it's crazy, guys. We have to do it tomorrow morning." I understood, and if it's not happening, it means God feels we're not ready. So what does that mean? It means we have to do whatever we can. And we've made major changes. I see what Temple Mount is today. 5 years ago, every Jew ascending Temple Mount was harassed, incitement. It was crazy. What made the change? The fact that the numbers grew from 5,000 to 50,000, from 180,000 to 800,000. So what we're doing is bringing more people, building another building and bringing more.
You're playing the long game.
Planting more trees. That's what we have to do. That's what we can do. Now, probably, it was God's decision, and He wasn't ready. That we weren't ready for it. I always say, what do you mean? Well, Theodore Herzl thought of the idea 100 years ago. We're 120 years ago. Why didn't people think of it 300 years ago? Now I can give you a book full of explanations. They weren't this and they weren't that, and weren't. Eventually, when you're a man of faith, you have to believe that that's God's will. So I think we have to do whatever we can to change, to improve, to upgrade. But eventually, we have to see that we're going on to the next step in Zionism. We're making progress, and we have to thank God for progress. We have to thank everybody who's supporting us with the progress. Sometimes people say to me, "Why are you supportive of different people with different religions?" Throughout history, we had those who hated us. Now we have people who love us. Sometimes they have interests. Okay, we have to thank people who do favors to us. We have to thank people who respect us. We have to thank people who are acknowledged with what we're doing, and we have to take our destiny in our hands. Now, it's not going to be simple. Nobody promises. One of the things that Corona teaches us, we were somewhere, had our plans. We knew exactly what's going to be next year and the following year. When we were sure the whole world was it, we knew exactly how our synagogue's going to look. God says, guys, stop. 1 second. Take it in my pace.
Right.
I want things to happen. This is so whatever is in our.
I just want to clarify one thing, my position. First of all, thank you for that. That was definitely comforting. But people say, okay, Ari, so what's your alternative? I answer my alternative to the Trump plan. By the way, I'm very grateful for Trump, and I think he's been a very good friend, and he will be judged favorably throughout history. But my alternative is keep things the way they are right now. Right now. Meaning like it's better than the alternative. I mean, I have learned to see also things through a nuanced prism, a nuanced lens. When I was in Jerusalem and I didn't see Arabs, they were the other. And throw them out of the country, they want to murder us, and it was very simple. And then I come out here and I'm working with Arabs all the time. And I meet so many of them that are just not only good workers, but good people that I can connect with on a spiritual level. And I realize that things are more nuanced than I once perceived them to be.
For sure.
That being said, there are certain things that aren't, and one of the things for me that's not nuanced here is that this little tiny piece of real estate, this is Judea and this is the land of Israel. And for us to de facto only declare sovereignty over 30%, leaving the other 70% in an ambiguous thing for the next president to maybe take, maybe not, because we've already de facto admitted that it's not fully. That's just my.
I totally disagree with you. I don't think we're going to calling that the plan is talking about sovereignty over 30%. It's talking about 30% of Judea and Samaria. What about the east of the Jordan River? What about Lebanon? What about the whole till the Persian Gulf? We have a destiny, but we can't say it's take it or leave it. We have to take things step by step. And people tell me, listen, why don't you go build the temple tomorrow? I say, listen, I do what I can do. If I spend time, and I learned that in the Knesset also, people used to say, why don't you do business? I said, listen, I check my political battles. I only do something that I believe that I can change. If I know I can't change, just to go make a statement and have myself quoted in all the news, it's not going to help me. Now look, what you
make enough news without intentionally doing
what you did here, and I'm telling you, Ari, I've walked around here just for a few minutes to see what you did here. You're a man of vision. You're a man of faith. And a man of faith also sometimes has to say, God, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? But at the same time, we have to understand that this is what God wants us to happen, and we have to make everything we can do to change. And I say again, leaving the situation as it is also a risk that things will get worse. It's also a risk. Now, I'll just give another example. I'll get another example of something very close to us. I always tell people, what about the peace? What about peace? And I say, listen, come with me to the shopping center at Gush Etzion. You'll see people, that's peace. You see people working together, people living together. And I say that even though I know that at that exact place, Ari Fold was shot, killed, murdered at that place. Stabbed, killed. He was murdered by a terrorist. So maybe we should close down the whole Gush. No, we should not close it down. We know that there are obstacles. We know we have painful days, very painful days. We know that we with some of our friends paid in their lives, God has his ways. I don't know how to explain it. But if I look at the long term, I say, yes, Gush Etzion is peace and Barkan is peace, but we also have to understand that if we don't continue and we don't make another, and we have an option to make another step, which I think is important. I think, and I support sovereignty over all of Judea and Samaria, not only the settlement. And I think we don't have to be afraid of that, but that's my plan. Apparently God thinks the people are not ready for that. So they're not ready for that. Okay, so I'm going to continue preaching about that. I'm going to continue talking about that. And I'm going to do whatever I can do. On the Temple Mount, I'm going to continue. When I go into the Temple Mount, the policeman at the entrance says, listen, you're not allowed to pray. And I say, you're right. And I go up there and I do my Zoom and I pray. So some things we have to find our way through the ways. The ways or the maze or whatever, you have to find your way, trying to get there. And that's one thing you have to do. You have to try to find your ways, but you have to know that sometimes there are obstacles that are not in our hand. And that's a very important thing, because when the Psalm says, if God doesn't build a house, then it's a waste of time for those who build it. Doesn't mean God says, guys, don't build, because you have to wait for me. It means do what you can, take God with you, and understand that sometimes you won't be able to, sometimes even something you built will fall down. But eventually, in the long term,
and if you try with all of your heart, and I believe in Hashem's eyes, it's as if you built it. And you said people say to you, why don't you build the temple tomorrow? What I can say is, knowing you all these years, whatever you're doing tomorrow, you're building the temple tomorrow. That's really everything you do is for that and about that. But I just want to
point out the most important vessel of the temple. The most important vessel of the temple is to remember, temple is not just a piece of real estate. The most important vessel of the temple is human hearts, the human soul. And when I try to touch, and when I receive and I open the website, I see a prayer request, shalomjerusalem.org. Somebody says, "Listen, I'm going through a terrible medical procedure. Please pray for me." I know that if I'm touching his heart and her heart, and I'm listening to their pain, and I'm connecting them to the idea of one God, that's part that in itself is a very important vessel of the temple.
That's beautiful. We're running out of time here, but there's one last question I needed to ask you. We have a lot of Jewish listeners, non-Jewish listeners, but Jewish listeners from throughout America right now. Okay, and America, it seems like it's coming apart at the fringes. The left there's riots, there's looting, they're pulling down statues. It seems like every day, and it's happening so rapidly, so quickly. Seeing things through a biblical lens, or just forget a biblical lens, seeing things through your lens, your glasses, your eyes. How do you make sense of what's happening in America right now, and what are the consequences? Is there a message that needs to be said to America, to American Jews, to anyone to share?
Okay, first of all, as I said before, we have to pray for the peace of the world. We have to pray and sim shalom tova uvracha chaim chen v'chesed rachamim. We're praying that God should put peace and mercy and grace and favor in the eyes of everyone. When everything, any kind of, just like in geology, when you have tectonical shaking, it's God is like reshaping the world. And what's happening now in the United States of America, different, and I believe strong, genuine pains and emotions are coming up. Sometimes they're being exaggerated by far. Sometimes they're being, but God wants us to listen to all the voices. And at the same time, there is no justification for any kind of violence. So I'm saying that I don't know where it's all going to lead to us, just like we don't know how the COVID-19 is all going to lead to us, but I see that something going on in the United States is shaking up, and it needs us to absorb to ourselves the idea of seeing every single human being. And if people were feeling that they're being stepped on, we should develop a sensitivity to that. And at the same time, we have to, I think that the United States of America brought to the world some great values. Most of them, by the way, people don't know, but all the founders of the United States of America were all biblical believers. And many of those values of freedom, of God, of respecting all human beings are biblical values, and we have to preserve them, and we have to listen to them, and we have to be there, and we can't allow people to take it apart. So as I said again, we're praying for the future of the United States of America, and we know that that stronger empires in the world have gone through changes, and apparently the United States of America is going through a change. It's much greater than ours. Just like the tsunami in India is something that's not in our hands. I think that what's going on in the United States is not our hands, but I know that eventually only good will grow out of it. So it's painful today, and our prayers are with every single one of the people of the United States of America, and really calling upon all leaders, anybody who has any control over his population, call people to stop using violence, to be more sensitive and more inclusive. And at the same time, we're all obligated to see a blessing.
This is true.
Unbelievable, guys. You don't know what I'm seeing right in front of my eyes, the Dead Sea, which God says that the water from Jerusalem will bring life to the Dead Sea. And it's going to happen. It's happening. And the water from Jerusalem, the city of blessing, the city of life, will bring blessing to the United States of America. So guys, have faith in yourselves, in God. And it's wonderful things are going to happen.
Okay.
Don't be turned down.
I know you say that you're not a rabbi, but I can call you Rebbe, right? That would be fair.
Call me whatever you want, as long as you don't call me late to dinner, they say.
Rabbi Yehudah Glick, thank you so much for joining us. It's an honor. It's a privilege. Shalom Jerusalem Foundation, that's shalomjerusalem.org. They can find out more about you, about what you're doing, about how they could connect to the Temple Mount, and to really redemption. We're so close. That word is so loaded. You know, a lot of people have theological things.
We're deep in it.
We're in it.
Guys, I want to remind you, 100 years ago, there was still slavery. Do you know that 100 years ago, not one woman in the world had a right to participate in elections in any country in the world? Today, we have women who are CEOs, who are scientists, who are
presidential candidates.
And so the world is going through a change. The redemption, you know, I see people, you know, I was a child, I had a next door neighbor who was a blind guy. I always know this guy, he has nothing can come out of him. He's gonna, so a few years
he's
he'll die.
Crippled, what's his purpose? Yeah.
Today you see people that are totally paralyzed, serving as physicists, as professors. This is part of redemption. Redemption means that the disabled is part of community. It means that women are part of community. It means that every single person is part of society. And that's our job to do it. And that's the idea of Jerusalem, the idea of giving a godly perspective at every single person. And so here, once, as you said, we're going to see some great things happening in the future. And
when I think about really redemption, what is it all men realize, not in their heads, but in their hearts, that we're all brothers. And one thing that brothers do is they love each other despite their differences. And I think you are a living example of loving people despite being shot by them, by being mobbed and beaten up by them. You still love your brother because you see what he may not have the eyes to see. And that's what the Temple Mount is about, and that's what your mission is about. And it's such a privilege having you out here. And Bezrat Hashem, please God, we'll merit to have you come again.
And, I send my personal love and shalom to every one of the people watching us. It's been a privilege to be with this lion over here. Ari is a lion, and it's really a lion who's roaring the Spirit of God to the world.
Shalom, everybody. You can, of course, tune in the Land of Israel Network, thelandofisrael.com. You can send me a message, me an email. That's ari@thelandofisrael.com. And can they reach out to you personally?
Reach out to CEO at shalomjerusalem.org. Reach out to, just come to our Facebook page. And I'm there. We're there. Every comment that I get, I try to repost.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
That was the famous recording of Colonel Matagur, commander of the paratroopers who conquered the Old City when he declared, "The Temple Mount is in our hands." Listen to it closely. This is way more than a report on developments from the battlefield to his commanders. It's the voice of history.
Find out the inside story of the most dramatic event in Israel's modern history. That's The Jewish Story with Rav Mike Feuer, every week on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.
Hey everybody, this is Jeremy Gimpel. Have you heard about the Land of Israel Fellowship? We started about 1 month ago, and people from all over the world, 24 countries, have joined. We meet live every Sunday, and the video session is recorded and then broadcast to all the members. And it's an exclusive group. It's a group that's focused on learning We're focused on praying together. We're focused on growing together. And it has been one of the biggest blessings in my life. And we have people from New Zealand to Australia, Alaska, Hawaii, Hong Kong, Jews, Christians. We have a Buddhist. We have one Muslim that's joined. We have people from so many different backgrounds, languages, and cultures. And we are literally creating a virtual house of prayer for all nations. And it is truly marvelous. And so if you want more information about that, please visit www.thelandofisrael.org.